Okay, I wasn't really going to make this video. But then someone asked, and then my completionist brain was like, should I, shouldn't I, should I? And then I was like, yeah, just do it. It is part of the whole, I've been learning about the Hugos and stuff like that, and I can maybe apply like some context here of things that I've learned along the way. But for the most part, chances are you already know about a bunch of the stuff that I'm about to summarize. I am not on top of things. This is weeks after the report was leaked. Well, not leaked, but there was a leak and there was a report. And there was some investigative journalist. I will have that down below. I will have other blog posts and other videos down below for you to find more information if this is not detailed enough, because I'm really not in the weeds. I'm very exhausted most of the time. And I'm exhausted by this. It's really depressing. I don't know what to take from it. It's just so depressing. God damn, Dave. Dave is just the worst. He's not a good guy. Anyways, that's really, like, we already knew Dave wasn't a good guy, and, like, it's just astronomically increased how much of a not good guy he is. Like, just even ignoring the fraud and the self-censorship that we're going to get into here, he's also apparently just not really nice to other people. And, yeah, there's allegations out there of that are 0% surprising. So, yeah. Brief recap, I do have a video of recapping where we were before this report came out, where essentially there were people who were basically disqualified and we didn't know why. And we also had stats numbers for the nomination sheets that made 0 sense, okay? That's the too long, didn't watch version of the first half of this. And the part that I'm still, like, really obsessed with is the math. And I think we sort of know why. And I got so obsessed with the math that I kind of learned how the EPH works, which is like that weird way that the Hugos kind of counteract slates. And what a slate is so, briefly, in I think 2015, because I think it was the year that Jemison won the Hugos for the first time with, I think, the 5th season, I think. Anyways, there was a time where a bunch of people on the internet were really angry that books were too woke, and they decided to submit slates. And what that means is all these people basically were like, yeah, everyone submit the same 5 books, and then we'll make sure that those are the books that make it on the short list. That's like what the slate method is. And so after that, the Hugos had a business meeting and they instituted some new math that didn't prevent slates. Like, technically slates are still legal. This is an important part. Slates are not illegal for the Hugos. They are not banned by the Constitution. They just did some math to make slates less powerful. And what that means is, so when you nominate for the Hugo, so we're going to get in the weeds about how the nomination math works just for a second before we get into the spicy scandal parts, because like I said, I think this is the only unique thing I can bring to this conversation. And it's the part that interested me the most because I just like learning how the Hugos work. So when you have your nomination sheet, say you choose to submit 5 books. They are each worth 0.2 points until, like, they go through each round of counting. The bottom ones are always, chopped off. So say one of your 5 books was one that was knocked off. So instead of now 0.2 points per book, now each of your books are worth 0.25 points when they add things up. So that's how the weighting works. So kind of if you nominate more books, they're weighted less, but you get that weighting back as they're kicked off the list. I don't know if I'm making sense there, but that's how the math works, and that's how they make slates less powerful. So whenever you're hearing about the EPH, when you're reading these documents, that's kind of the weird math they're talking about, and it doesn't sound that complicated to me now that I've read about it, so I really don't know how people keep screwing it up. Like, at least if you are comfortable with math in an Excel sheet and you are told what to do, it's really not that difficult. Like, this is not high-level calculus or differential equations. This is just weighted numbers that you change as books are no longer eligible to make the shortlist. It's really not that intense. Because I learned about this because we were discussing nominations for the upcoming year and how if you want the books you really love to have a higher weighting for sure, you should nominate only the ones that you really love. You shouldn't just fill your sheet. But at the same time, that filling your sheet only negatively impacts your books if all 5 of them were to maybe become close to making the list. So anyways, that's a different discussion of like how to mathematically make your ballot as advantageous for your books as possible. When at the end of the day, it's a lot of like, chances are a book that you really love might not make it if it's just really not popular enough. It's still a popularity contest. It's about the books that are marketed the best, that most people have read, because Hugo voters are not always people who just read like hundreds of books a year. They might only read like 20 or 30, and that's okay too. They're still readers. The big thing is that in theory, there are no rules for being the optimum Hugo reader. We'll get into that. Okay, so that's the part of the math that no one could get to make sense because some of those numbers should have been changing in certain ways. And then also, as we talked about, the raw numbers really didn't make sense. Like, truly didn't make sense. And we kind of learned why. So there was this report that came out. And like I said, I'll link the report down below. And what we learned in this report, because someone decided to share the emails because she was on the team, she apologized profusely. She was complicit in what was happening and felt really guilty, and so released all this information that we now get to parse. And part of that information was learning that there was self-censorship going on. They were never explicitly told. From what we can tell, there might be a whole other set of emails between Dave and someone else where things are more explicit. But from what we can see, it was Dave going, we want to make sure we don't upset, positions in China. So we need to look through these books and make sure, we mark when they mention certain countries. So like Tibet, China, I think there was a few other ones that are like hot topic issues. We need to flag if people have said anything in the back. They were making dossiers of people and of books. They were also not factually correct. They were also commenting on books, being like, it mentions China, but I haven't read the book yet, so I don't really know if it would be an issue. Like Babel by R.F. Kuang, who was a Chinese citizen at one point, I'm pretty sure, and now she's, I think, a full U.S. citizen. I'm unclear about that. But regardless, the book itself is not anti-China. It's very anti-UK imperialism. Anyways, I don't even think you need to read the book to know that. I think you just need to read the blurb, regardless of the lack of research on that one. You can just read a synopsis of the book and learn that. You don't have to read the 500 pages to know that it's not actually anti-China. It's actually anti-British imperialism. That's what the book's about. And it's getting translated. So obviously it's okay enough to sell copies in China. Regardless. So we have these people who do not know what is and isn't okay in Chinese culture, basically, because it's a lot of, I guess, it's culturally speaking, apparently, it's a lot of you kind of know what you should and shouldn't talk about. I don't know. The key thing is they were not asked to do this, and they chose to do it, and they did it really poorly. And yeah, but this was the big thing that was in the report. So this is the self-censorship. This is where Dave was just hungry with power, and he was having a lot of fun. At least that's how I envision it. There's nothing about how Dave has acted publicly that makes me think he is not the type of guy who doesn't revel in power and then taking advantage of the power when it seeks his benefits, I don't know. I just see a very power-hungry man who's like, ooh, let's see if we can make this more complicated and give me more power. But the big thing, and this was the thing I didn't like when I was reading the report, is but we didn't explain the math. Why is the math so bad? Because the math is still so bad, guys. It's so bad. And I'm a numbers person. I just wanted to understand how we got such weird, wonky numbers. I just wanted to know. And I was, I read this article at 8 in the morning when I woke up. It was shared on my Discord. And then I didn't really go into any of the supporting documents that they shared. But there was a lot of supporting documents. You could read the emails, and then there was the validation sheet that had all the self-censoring information of people who could be problems or not. And I'm sure if you've been in the know, you've already heard the really hysterical one of so one of the fan cast writers, Paul, one of the reasons he was, deemed ineligible was he went to Tibet. He did not go to Tibet. He went to Nepal, which are not the same place. That's just how geography works. But T. Kingfisher, who won the Hugo, she was the winner with Nettle and Bone, went to Tibet. So this obviously didn't even matter. And it's so clear that for the most part, powers that be in China did not really care about our little sci-fi fantasy award. It's big for us, but it's really not that big a deal. It's science fiction fantasy is not the most read genre globally by a long shot. So anyways, I digress. So, like I said, their self-censorship shouldn't have been done. It's wild to me because these are, in theory, all people who love sci-fi and fantasy. It's dude, these are the villains of almost every sci-fi fantasy book you've ever read. How are you not seeing the red flags in your own life? Where is the self-internalized thought process here of, this is bad, why am I doing it? If you felt like you truly had to do this for things to be safe, then just don't. Then just be oh, then I guess we can't do the Hugos because, we can't. But that's not the big problem. That's wow, the incompetence and it's just a lot. But this next part is even more a lot, and I don't even know, the Hugos, in theory, it's always been in theory, never, and this is the proof that it's always been a theory, is for WorldCon, which in theory is about the world, world SFF. The Hugos is to find, really highlight science fiction fantasy in the world. And the world does not just speak English, but, it has always been a very Western-leaning, English-language focused award, correct? That has always been there. But the idea was, in theory, any work could win if it was good enough, hypothetically. And what we were shown this year is that it doesn't matter. It will always focus on English written works because. So what allegedly happened is there was a recommended reading list. So there were a huge amount of fans in China who were super excited to have the Worldcon. They are sci-fi fantasy readers. They have a right to have memberships and to vote. Just because they're in China and not English speakers in Canada, US, or the UK, they have every right to do this. And they were given a recommended reading list. And so they got really excited. And, they picked the books that they wanted to vote from, this recommended reading list. And Dave decided that was a slate. Which again, as we've stated at the beginning of this video, slates are not illegal. They're not illegal. They are not mathematically advantageous, but they are not illegal. And a bunch of people voted for the books they wanted to vote for. And we saw this on the validation sheet. I can't really parse the validation sheet. I'm not going to get into, I don't understand what the rankings mean. It's a very messy Excel spreadsheet sort of thing in a Google Doc. I don't really get it. But what you can get for sure is that there are books on that sheet that did not make it to the finalist sheet. And there's no answer for it other than what Dave said of we just removed ballots that were slates. So we don't even know. Hundreds, thousands, we do not know how many ballots were not counted. And this is what some people have decided is potentially the reason for this huge cliff that we see in the data. Because if you don't remember from the last discussion, we just have huge numbers and then a complete fall off. Even with the cliff, I don't really know how some things got into certain places that they did, if they didn't maybe reuse some of those votes to do odd fake math. So the math still doesn't make sense to me, but in terms of figuring out what they did with the numbers, it's I still don't know what they were doing, but I now can see where some of the missing data is, and it's the idea that I think they didn't know how to handle the fact that maybe all of the nominees would have been written by Chinese authors, and apparently that could have been the end of the world. Maybe. I don't know. I think that's what Dave was trying to avoid. He wanted to make nice with Chinese officials and business interests for his own needs, so he wanted to self-censor and play nice when he wasn't asked to. And he also wanted to make sure that the Hugos looked very normal and were very white, not white, but very English. And although I think most of the works were written by white people. Is Sylvia Miranda Garcia the only author of color in the novels? Potentially. I didn't even break that down because every year it's so uninspiring. It's just not even normal. It's just very normalized. So we have a bunch of disenfranchised SFF people who in theory have every right to be just as important of a Worldcon member as us English speakers. And it's just so annoying. And this has led to a lot of authors basically, I think the author of the short story that won, I think it's called Rabbit Test. I haven't read it. I want to. I've been wanting to read the story. This only puts the author higher in my estimations, but she basically chose to unwin the Hugo. Because especially for the short story category, I think a few of the categories might have had 2 English works and a handful of Chinese works. If I'm reading that sheet correctly at all, I might not be. But the short story section should have been all Chinese works, which makes sense to me. I read last year, 2 years ago, an anthology of SFF works by Chinese authors. They love writing short fiction, and they love reading short fiction. That made complete sense to me. We don't like reading short fiction in the United States, from what I can tell on Goodreads. We don't do that very often. So that made sense to me that there would be a more avid short story fan base that was more actively nominating works that would have won. But that was one of the categories that should have, for sure, been a Chinese work. I don't know. It's all depressing, which is why I didn't really want to make this video. But if you wanted to know what we have learned since then, that's the 1-2 punch. There was some fraud where we disenfranchised voters and just threw out a bunch of votes because Dave wanted to. Presumably because he wanted to make it a Western shortlist. That's my guess. I am just hypothesizing. I won't know for sure because Dave has not told us. He is convinced, still, to this minute, since I have last heard someone from the transcript of his interview, that he did everything right and someone else in his position would have done the exact same thing. And no, I don't think so. I do think there are people who would have been in his position who would have been wouldn't even have thought to misuse power this egregiously. Like, wouldn't even have started. I think there are plenty of people who would have started this whole process just normally and wouldn't have even thought of, oh, we need to make sure we do special self-censor considerations. I just... Anyways, Dave's a trip. I don't like the man. Yeah, yeah. I don't even know the man, but he doesn't seem great on any level, professional, personal. Don't like what he did with the Hugos. Which, again, is just, like, it's a very important award for authors in our fan base and stuff like that, but it's like, I don't... This was definitely made to be a bigger scandal than it needed to be, when in theory we were trying to avoid scandal. Correct? I don't know. Hopefully this made any sense. Hopefully this was, you know, maybe a different... I don't know if it's very different. Like I said, I just did this because someone asked, and because my completionist brain was like, fine, finish the story. This is part 2. I'm done with it. Glasgow looks like it's going great. And for the most part, I know a lot of people feel like this means it's always been a sham. And yes, we do not know when people may or may not have misused power in small ways, but most of the time, in the numbers, which we are transparently given, we can see patterns and we can see the reasonings or non-reasonings for situations that occur. This was the first year where things were truly not numerically transparent in a way that set off all of the red flags. So yes, we cannot confirm if people haven't misused their powers in small ways in the past. But to this scale, this is completely different than what we have ever seen before. And Glasgow's been very transparent about what they've been doing. I think it'll still be the Hugos, which still has the same problems that it always has baked in, that it has a paywall, that it doesn't truly represent the world SFF fan base and things like that. Like, that's built in. But it's not like this, where, like, it's extreme scandal and fraud. So I still like the Hugos. I mean, flaws and all. I think it still creates a list that usually is interesting. I now know why last year's list was so boring. Gosh, it was so boring. And that's the thing. They tried to make it so boring and normal, and it just all backfired. Anyways, I have nothing else useful to say. If you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here, leave a world. I think we did rocket last time. So leave a world for WorldCon. And if you have any thoughts or other resources you want to share with people, please put them in the comments. If you do links, I think YouTube might delete them. And also, if you ever just want to chat with other people talk about the SFF awards in general in my Discord all the time. That's where I learn about everything, are people sharing links over there. And we have a lot of Blue Sky posts and links and blog posts that I have been casually consuming over the weeks. But we also talk about other awards and things like that. All right, that's it for this one. Like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one.